Welcome to the Beef Lab. I'm your host, Coach Joe Strong, here at the Mecca of Strength and Conditioning, Varsity House Gym. The Beef Lab is an inside look at everything it takes to run a world-class training facility. This is the source for strength entrepreneurs who want to learn more about programming, training athletes, business development, and marketing their brand. We're going to show you how we took Varsity House from a dingy little garage gym to a world-class brand. All right, everybody, thanks for coming for our next episode of the Beef Lab. Today's episode's on training female athletes, and I'm here with two of our female athletes. One of them's on the way, going to come in a little late. We have Sinead Gorley, who is a professional athlete bobsledder on the U.S. bobsled team. We have Laura, who is a track and field athlete and runner, sprinter, and we're gonna have Lexi, who is a field sport athlete who has played every field sport known to man, from volleyball to basketball to softball and so forth. And we're just gonna talk a little bit about some of the misconceptions about training female athletes, some of the training considerations for female athletes, a little bit about their background and how they got into training, and then some of the variations in their training program based on what they do and what they don't do. And I think that's something that a lot of coaches leave out. They just kind of create a broad spectrum plan for everyone, and they don't really put a lot of account on what that athlete does in their training program and in their sport, and what their end goal is, and then what they don't do. So it's more important what they don't do. So just a quick example of that is, like, Laura is a track and field sprinter. She runs in a straight line. What she doesn't do is change direction. So her training program really has no change in direction programming in it. So something like that. So we'll kind of cover some of those bases, give you guys a little bit of a template. We're going to post everything up on our show notes as usual. I'll put my outline up there. I'll put some links to some training videos that we have of Sinead and the girls working out, and you'll see that there really isn't much of a difference in the training program. So let's just start with some of the misconceptions about training. And I think one of the biggest things, girls, is that people just people have a misconception that lifting weights is only for boys, and that and because it is kind of a male-centric thing, right? Obviously, you girls work out here all the time. There's always a lot more boys here than there are girls, and it's just something that's kind of built into the process of being a meathead guy. And a lot of girls come in here, a lot of the young girls, they think, oh, I don't want to get big, I don't want to get big. Well, it takes a lot of training to get big, and some of the other things is, like, I think an old school misconception that a lot of parents of people your age, so they would be, maybe 10 years older than me, in their 50s, had that old school misconception that training will stunt your growth, right? I'm sure you've heard that before, like, oh, I'm afraid to get, you're tall, you're pretty tall for a girl, and you're definitely both over the average, for height for females, so I don't think there's any real stunted growth there. You don't have any, like, weirdly shaped arm parts or anything like that. And so let's just kind of go down the line. Should girls lift weights? Obviously, we're kind of biased here. You both lift weights a lot. Absolutely. Tell me a little bit about how you got into your sport and into lifting weights.
So I started in track and field. I was a thrower, which lifting kind of goes hand in hand with throwing, but we still didn't start lifting heavy until D1 college, and still girls were afraid of getting big, but it really takes so much to get big.
And you didn't train at all in high school, really?
Not like, we did a little bit of bicep. We had a girls' weight room and a guys' weight room. In the girls' weight room, we just had, like, little bicep curls and things like that, but it wasn't really, it was all technical work.
Yeah.
We definitely should have lifted in high school for sure.
And how'd you get into training?
Actually, in high school, we had our strength and conditioning, who's also our athletic trainer, who he would train us over the summer. And then in season, my jumping coach would actually train with us, and we would do some lifting, but it was just very basic.
So you did do some lifting in high school, though. Yeah. So you kind of started. Now, were you always a track athlete? Did you play any field sports?
I actually played soccer. I played travel soccer my whole life growing up.
Okay. Through high school?
Yes, until high school, until I got a major injury to my foot, and that was kind of the deciding factor for me if I wanted to continue with soccer or switch to just track and put all my focus into that.
All right, so great. And then and I'll speak for Lexi because she's not here, and I know she started training with me So, you know, we have kind of 3 age lineages here and 3 physiotypes, and that's kind of why I want to have her here too. Is it's like, you know, I have a 17-year-old field sport athlete, a 21-year-old, 20-year-old, you know, track and field college athlete, and a 28-year-old professional athlete who kind of have 3 different lineages. Hers is obviously, you know, heavy on the power strength. Yours is more explosive strength and speed, you know, and hers is needed a lot of change of direction. And because she's a softball player primarily, you know, a lot of power development too, not a ton of condition, although we do here because she plays basketball still in high school. But you can see the difference, you know. You two are very similar strength. You know, you're a little bit stronger, but you're definitely much older and have been lifting longer. But for a girl who's 17 years old, she's very strong because she started lifting at a young age. So she's a few of example who's been in a structured strength training program for a few years at a young age. You know, so when she's your age, you know, if she continues to train, she could have the potential to be a total animal. You know, a total beast. So. You know, second, you know, they say, you know, training makes you look like a man. Well, I mean, you look like pretty 2 young girls to me, so I don't know, you know, being strong and fit is kind of the new thing, you know, and you see a lot of these cross, you know, strong is the new sexy type of deal, and you know my perspective, you know, I'd rather be, you know, big and jacked and ripped, and is way better than being weak and, you know, wimpy, you know. Yeah. So even for a girl, you know, you want to be fit, you want to look good, you want to feel good, you want to know that if your boyfriend acts up, you can give him a smack in the mouth and, you know, mess him up a little bit, you know, and then stunting your growth, and obviously that's a misconception that started because of and I know where that came from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, young gymnastic athletes, right, and Olympic weightlifters, people from the Soviet Union, Russia, China, and stuff like that, right, and Bulgaria, and they had all the gymnasts, you know, these girls are training 10 hours a day, and it started with like the female athlete triad, which I'm sure a lot of you heard, you know, if you're the overtraining and the starvation of those athletes led to the lack of puberty and the, you know, and they weren't getting enough nutrients, and they were overtraining completely, and they weren't growing. So you had a very small segment of athletes who kind of ruined it and created this misconception for everybody. I still have parents in here today telling me, well, I didn't want them to start lifting weight, boys or girls, because I thought it would stunt their growth. And it's just something that's carried over. But you could look at the American Council on Exercise, the American College of Sports Medicine, and even the Mayo Clinic have standpoints on that, on training youth athletes. And there is no correlation between stunted growth. You have to damage the growth plate to damage the growth, and that can happen a lot more in like a field sport like soccer or football for boys, way more than it can in a controlled sitting in the gym. Can you get hurt lifting? Yeah, but if you have a good coach, right, and you have a quality program that's progressive, then the likelihood of getting hurt in a controlled setting is very small. So let's just talk about the training program here and some considerations that we do have for females, because there are some things that we do a little bit differently. But I'm gonna post up Sinead's workout primarily because hers is, in a sense, the most advanced in terms of weight training, and you'll see that it is way harder than any of our high school athletes, and on par with even like our professional athletes like Mike Riley and the guys who train here. Her program is a variation of that, you know, explosive power development type of program that we have for our professional athletes, and then we just scale it down, you know, for each level of athlete. And you know, you're still box squatting, overhead pressing, bench pressing, pull-ups, you know, and the girls are doing all those things. For my track athletes, I don't bench press a lot because there's no real need to. She has to push, so it's a little bit different. We do pressing movements all the time. No, it's not like we don't do dumbbell presses and things like that. And we work up to maxes, and we, you know, so we're either working periods where we're working, you know, hypertrophy and volume, periods where we're working raw strength and hitting like 5-3, like a 5-3-1 progression or singles and things like that, and working up to an all-out max, and or working percentage work for all-out speed and explosive power, you know. So the only difference is there is just how much weight you guys can actually lift versus some of the male counterparts, you know what I mean? So there is no real difference there. Muscle is muscle. Although there are some slight differences between the percentages of muscle mass and the type of muscle fibers that men have relative to females, the action of a muscle fiber and the trainability of the neuromuscular system is exactly the same. So there really isn't any difference. The biggest difference, though, is on injury prevention. Women do have a greater risk of injury, and it's really, there's, you know, 3 main reasons for that. Okay. And we'll get to that in a second, but you know, the differences are an increased focus on injury prevention, right? We do a lot of hips, hamstring, and knee, lower back work. Every workout, every single workout that we do, there's some type of posterior chain, there's some type of hip work worked into our warm-up, and a lot of injury prevention, because women generally tend to have a higher risk of injury. The second thing we have is an increased focus on weight training, where some of my male athletes might be doing more like med ball throws and explosive things. Women need to train with weights a little bit more. I'll talk about it in a minute, just because you lose muscle mass a lot faster than men do. So in terms of time frame, I take off a month, you take off a month. If we were doing muscle testing, right, and I could do like a biopsy test and test the percentage of muscle fibers in your body and do like a body mass scans and stuff like that, you would almost inevitably lose more muscle mass percentage-wise than I would over that period of time, and that's primarily due to our hormonal makeup. And then the other thing is really just nutrition. I try to be all over the girls with their nutrition, because of the paradox of not wanting to look like a man. I'm going to get too big. They correlate that with not eating either. So you have so a lot of girls come in here and they're playing sports 3 or 4 days a week. Especially you girls are a little different because you're older now and you're out of the daddy ball situation, But if you have like Lex, when she's played 3 sports her whole life, year round, and it's AAU basketball, AAU soccer, AAU this, you know what I mean? And it's year round, and it's 3 or 4 games, tournaments on the weekends, training with me a couple days a week, and eating like crap, right? And it hasn't been until like the last year and a half where we started really hammering her on her nutrition that I've seen a real physical change in her body, and she's leaned out and got a lot more muscular and moves a lot better and feels a lot better. And that's just come from, the only thing that's been different is she cut out most of the crappy AAU and now only focuses on 1 or 2 sports, and she cleaned up her nutrition. So that is one thing that we emphasize a lot. Women tend to not eat for performance. They tend to eat for body type. You know what I mean? It's like I eat like a bird. I have a salad with a piece of salmon that's the size of my thumb, right? And that's lunch. And instead of eating for performance, So, and most women don't have any clue. When I tell them you got to eat 2,000 calories, and I lay that out in terms of food, it looks like a lot of food. But if you're an athlete and you're working out every day, it's not a lot of food. That's the base. It's probably more like 2,500 to 3,000 calories, especially for you, for a larger female athlete, So who has more muscle mass. You obviously, your calorie requirements are different than hers, right? So you train 6 days a week, right? Now you're running track and stuff like that, but you're just a smaller physio type. So when you break down calories versus size and goals, your goals are heavy on the muscle side. Your goals are more speed. You got to maintain a lighter body weight, right? If you bulked up to 150, you're not going to be as fast. So, right? And most, again, most females are below their caloric intake and protein consumption. Now, you two are pretty good, and I know your diet's clean, and I know you're pretty clean, and we focus a lot on the protein consumption. But when I look at a typical high school girl's diet, a lot of times, and even some of my college girls, it's a bagel for breakfast. Nothing for lunch. They don't eat anything for lunch. An apple or a pear or a banana or something in the afternoon, and then it's dinner, and it's and it's usually pasta, rice, carbs. You know what I mean? And it could be 2 or 3 days where they've, in a sense, met their supposed protein requirements. So that's the first thing that I usually try to clean up is if we do that. Can you stop him from hitting that? Thank you. Okay, and just try to hit those protein requirements. So the first thing I try to do with the girls is hey, eat breakfast, eat lunch, eat dinner. We start with that, and then it's eat protein, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then we'll build on it from there. And you girls are kind of got a system down going that where it's fine now. All right, so why do women? And do you have any idea why women get injured more than men, and why, especially knee injuries, especially ACLs and things like that? Your foot injury was separate, but Lexi tore her ACL, so hopefully she comes in a minute and we can talk to her about it. But she had an ACL injury, and she's a perfect example of have you heard of Q angle? Have you heard of that?
Just wider hip.
Right. It's the quadriceps angle, but it's the hip to knee angle. A typical guy is hips, knees. A typical girl is hips, knees, right? So the larger the Q angle, the greater the pressure on the knee, especially for field sport athletes who have lateral movement. You girls are not as susceptible because your sport is straight away, but it doesn't mean that it can't happen. Most ACL and knee injuries occur during the deceleration process, you know, so since you're accelerating and, you know, you have, you know, another 50 yards to slow down, and you jump in the boat and away you go, right? And you know, and right, exactly. So it's totally different. But you know, for Lex, it was, you know, again, planting that foot, rotating, pop, you know, and a lot of that is because of that Q angle. That's just a natural physiological thing that you can't change that. You know, some girls, if you have wider hips and kind of like knock knees in a sense, that sets you up for a lot of injuries. The other thing is just a lack of muscular strength. I see a lot. We've had 1, 2, 3, 4. I think we've had 6 girls in the gym in the last 2 years that have come to train, who are post ACL repair, all high school, all under the age of 18. You know, and a lot of that comes from, again, it's overuse and things like that. But every girl that came in was weak, was tall, big Q angle, right? And no muscular training whatsoever, like no muscular strength, you know. So women in general have, you know, up to 25%, up to 50% less, you know, muscle mass, you know, depending per size. So 150-pound male, 150-pound female. The 150-pound male could have 25 to 50% more muscle mass, you know, even though they weigh the same, again, because women generally have a higher fat percentage. And the other thing is, too, is that men have a higher percentage of type 2 muscle fibers, type 2 muscle being fast twitch muscle fibers. So they have more explosive, strength dominant muscle fibers, you know, just in natural percentage. So again, those are some genetic factors that you're fighting. And then the last thing is testosterone, right? Most men have anywhere between 8 and 20 times more testosterone than our female counterparts. So what drives your muscle growth, right, and mine, is, you know, a lot less in females. So, you know, and obviously for a reason, no, there aren't too many females. Now you can, but most of the girls you see in like CrossFit and bodybuilding stuff are chemically enhanced, and that's really the only way. So when, again, going back to the misconception of looking like a man, unless you're taking steroids or some type of chemical enhancer, or you're taking all these like crazy hormone boosters and things like these, you know, pre-workouts, right? It takes a long time. You've been lifting your whole life, and you've been lifting for a lot of years, you know, and you're right, you know, and you're really strong for a female athlete, and you know, by no means like look disgusting, like muscles bulging out of your ears and stuff like that. So it really does, it has a lot to do with your natural genetics. Are some girls leaner and more muscular? Yeah, that's of course. You're a lean girl. You got muscle, you got veins and stuff like that, but you're not by no means over muscular, like looking exaggerated. And that's not gonna happen to most people because you don't have testosterone. So, and that brings me back to the reason why it's so important for women to weight train, and that's because of that lack of testosterone. The tail off post-training is so much faster, you know, because I still have testosterone, because I produce more testosterone, I hold on to my muscle mass faster, or longer rather, and you will tail off quick. So a big mistake that I see a lot of female athletes make is they disappear during their season and they don't train. So like high school, always, right? Almost every girl, they're gone, they disappear, they don't lift for 4 months, they come back. We have to start right back from the beginning. You know, you train all season, you train all year, right? You've been training all year for 2 years now. You've been with me for 2 years. You're going on a year, you know, training with me. And Lexi's been with me for about four years, going into her 5th year training, you know. So, right. So she's been, you know, putting it together for a long time. So, I just want a little bit of difference, like in the training programs. You know, obviously, you know, if we, I'll start with Laura, and if you know, it's kind of be like Laura, Lexi. In terms of physiotypes, Laura's is the smallest female of the 3. Lexi is a little bit bigger and a larger sized, you know, has a little bit more muscle mass naturally. Even though Laura's very strong and has been training, you're a little stronger than she is. But I think, you know, like I said, in another year or 2 of training, Lexi will be a stronger athlete physically. And then Sinead, who's older and got the gun show, and the biggest quads in the gym, definitely, right? I don't know. Either we're gonna have to measure them out, but you know, but the reality is that, you know, your program is designed to elicit fast twitch, explosive muscle. So we do focus on strength and we do lift heavy, but a lot of it is percentage work with a lot of pop, you know, and trying to move the weights quickly, you know. And then like now, where you kind of already started the winter, you know, track season, it's really just been maintenance work, you know, and I'm trying not to, like, in a sense, beat you up too much. I don't want you to be killer sore. I want you to get a good workout, and I want you to maintain your muscular abilities, but I don't want to kill you, you know. I kill all the time, because there's no, you don't have it, you're not in season, and you're just trying to get as strong and as explosive as possible. So, and Lexi, being a multi-sport athlete and coming into her basketball season, we've focused a lot on lateral strength and lateral stabilization of her core, of her hips, and lateral lunging, lateral movement, and a huge emphasis over the last 3 or 4 weeks on her speed and agility and quickness stuff, her lateral movement. So she comes in on another day on her own and does a whole, you know, quickness drills, foot drills, ladder drills, change of direction drills, and things like that, and works on the muscular aspect of change of direction, working that lateral strength. Where you girls, it's kind of, that would just take away from time. It's a waste of time, you know. So for me, I love it when I go to a training session at another gym, no names here, but we'll go to another gym, and I'm talking to the coach, and he's got his track athletes doing ladder drills, and or his, you know, his softball girls, you know, doing like lactic acid, you know, threshold conditioning, and just beating them into the ground and stuff like that. And it's totally outside of the parameters of the sports, with no real eye on the prize, because remember, everything you do training wise takes away from something, you know. So if I spend any amount of time, if me and you spent an hour doing lateral change of direction drills, and I blow out your hips because they're so sore, and then the next day we come in and we're supposed to front squat, but you're so sore because you were doing lateral drills, and it takes away from that session, it's a waste of time. It's a waste of muscular energy, neurological energy, and it could also lead, because you haven't done that in your sport and you don't do that at all, and all of a sudden I just place that stress on you. That's how you get injured. You know, you just do something stupid out of the blue, like, you know, like some of the kids here, they do dumb stuff, right? They want to come home and train. In the football players, I mean, we're meatheads. We're you know, I do dumb stuff all the time, but I'm not training for anything, so I could abuse myself and kind of call it research, right? But like for some of our football players, they'll come home and they'll go out and run 15 hill sprints, you know, and they haven't done anything. And, you know, and they blow out their ankles, and their calves are killing them, and they can't train. Their hamstrings are blowing up, and they can't train for 3 days because they do it. So things like that can really destroy, especially a young girl, right? You come into the gym for the first time, and I make you do, I don't know, something really stupid, like a 10 by 10 squat session, right? Toast. You know, you're never coming back. Yeah, you never come back. And your perception of weight training is that was horrible. I'm never doing that again. You know, mom and dad are like, we're not, weight training's bad, right? And then that's it. And then you're crushed. And then the reality is, when you go to college, you have to weight train. Everybody weight trains. Every athlete from the top down should do some type of strength training. So what is the appropriate age to train? And you know, what types of training should girls be doing at those ages? And the reality is that you are never too old to strength train, because remember, strength training is just resistance training. It doesn't have to be weightlifting. So a 3-year-old girl can do push-ups, sit-ups, squats, lunges, can do gymnastics, can swim, right? Can go to karate like I did, right? When I was a little kid, that was my strength training for years. I didn't do any strength training. I was a swimmer, and I did karate, and that was it until I got to be about 12 years old. That's all, you know, dynamic body movements, coordination stuff, and those are the types of things that you should be doing as a little girl. And you just try and do as much as you can and have fun. Play a couple different sports, and don't focus on the winning. Focus on the technical aspect and getting good at movements. You know, I think the big mistake that a lot of parents make is that it's all about the sport, and it's all about winning and competing, and it's not about getting good at anything, right? It's just like, let's just go out and play 500 games a week, and then you know, a couple girls that kind of get through that, who survive that, you know, that torture, that borderline child abuse, make it through and become like Lexi and become good athletes. You know, well, she was in it. She did every sport. She did all the AAUs, and it's no fault of anybody's parents or anything like that. Most people just don't know better. So it's like, hey, everybody's doing it. The coach comes up to you and says, hey, if you don't do the travel team, you're not going to play on the high school team, you know, stuff like that. And you kind of get pressured into that environment. So I think that's the biggest takeaway for training the females is that, you know, the reason why most women don't do it is because it's not part of your culture, right? Girls play with dolls, boys go outside and wrestle, beat each other up, you know what I mean? And so there's a cultural misconception that women, you know, should not be strong, should not work out, you know. It's almost, you know, playing sports has gotten way more popular since I was a kid. When I was a kid, you know, most of the girls did cheerleading, they did, you know, field hockey was big, you know. The girls basketball, you know, those were the tomboys, you know, that was kind of like they were like, but now sports is really taking off for females. I think a lot of the like current athletes like Maria Sharapova, who's a, you know, top ranked athlete, Mia Hamm, you know, the Misty May and Kerry Walsh, you know, who've gotten a tremendous amount of fame from the Olympics and their professional athletes, have done a lot to really bring women's sports kind of up to par. And tennis is great because tennis is the only sport where the men's and women's matches, they're actually paying the same too. So like if it's $2 million for Wimbledon for the boys, it's $2 million for the girls, you know, and I think female tennis is just as exciting, almost, as males. Sorry, girls, as males tennis, you know. I still think female basketball. I still think professional WNBA though is like watching the grass grow, but it's getting there. It's getting there, you know. And I think as female athleticism and sports science progresses, it'll only get better and better and better. And then, you know, it's like I grew up emulating Arnold Schwarzenegger and watching like Conan and Rambo, right? I'm sure Conan and Rambo aren't in your top 10 movie list. You know, you probably didn't have pictures of Arnold Schwarzenegger on a mirror in your bedroom, right? Mom would have been a little scared, like, oh, what's going on here, right? Dad would have been like, that's it, you know, no more sport. You're gonna hang, you know, yeah, she's not allowed to hang out with any boys anymore, right? So that's part of it. I think the other thing is that, you know, girls generally don't play sports where strength training is kind of a built-in component of the sport. So like it's soccer, it's field hockey, it's volleyball, and at the young age there's none of those strength components where like a lot of guys it's football and wrestling, and they're inherently strength-centric even in the nature of playing the sport. It's explosive sprints and kind of body wrestling and or wrestling itself develops a lot of physical strength, where like if you're playing field hockey or soccer as a young female, like a, you know, 10, 11, 12-year-old, there's no contact, there's no nothing. It's just aerobic kind of cardio. You're just running around. So, and maybe in warm-ups you do some lunges, some squats, and a couple BS push-ups that nobody. How many times when you girls were kids and you see the girls doing push-ups, you know, there's nobody really
it's not
making you
knowledge to do lifting things.
Right, exactly. Like it's not common. It wasn't even for me. I remember being in high school, and our coach would just be like, "Yeah, all right, lift." Lift what? You know, so 10 dudes would get on the bench and 10 dudes would get on the preacher curl machine, you know, and just hang out. You could just hop in. It's all right. We're almost done, but that's fine. All right, so Lexi finally showed up. Like I said, we were talking about Lexi, and Lexi's one of my field sport athletes who's been training with me since she was about 14, 15, and a freshman in high school. I think she started coming over to the gym, and you know, we were just talking about some of the differences in the programming. I spoke for you since you weren't here, but basically, you know, that your sport, being a field sport, requires a lot of change of direction, where you have a linear track athlete who runs in a straight line, and we have kind of a specialty athlete, a bobsledder, who, and again, pushes in a straight line. So in terms of programming, you know, I try to focus a lot more on lateral strength training, lateral core stabilization, and you have to do a lot more like speed, agility, quickness. You're out doing basketball training, you're out doing ladder drills and change of direction work, where you're working on sprints and you push the prowler all the time. You know, that's pretty much it. You just, you know, or you go take runs and you got to go push the sled, you know, and that's really all it comes down to. We were just kind of finishing up with, you know, some of the reasons why women, you know, in a sense, don't train and don't have, you know, a base of muscular strength. And we said primarily that it's just, you know, because, you know, it's not in your culture. You know, it's kind of like, oh, girls shouldn't work out, it's going to make me look like a man, stuff like that. And that's really just a false misconception of it. And lastly, on this, you know, and I was saying that this was a big thing for you. a lot of female athletes, because the gym is not kind of part of the ideology, it's like, oh, I got to go work out, you know, at a young age, it becomes all about the sport. So I'm playing a bunch of sports, I'm playing AAU, I'm playing year round, I got 50,000 games, and no real physical development. Where, you know, the one good thing about sprinting is that it does build a lot of strength because it is a maximal effort movement, right? And you're going hard. So if you're a sprinter from the time you're like, you know, 10, 11, 12, you're going to get a pretty high level of lower body strength and core strength. I mean, just sprinting hard, when you're running 100 or 200 all out, your arms, everything, I mean, your shoulders are blown out. The difference in field sports is it's that intermittent, you know, kind of activity where it's like there's periods of output, but it's a lot of the kind of fluff in the middle where you're just kind of like, you know, maybe you got a juke and cut once and then you jog down the other end of the field. So it's a lot of playing, and because of like the nature of like basketball being a lot of side to side, softball with a lot of throwing, right, and the repetitiveness of those sports and those movements, they put a lot of strain on your body, you know, and you know, we see a lot more injuries in field sport athletes than we do with linear athletes. Obviously, you know, we know that you had torn your ACL, and that comes from, you know, plant and boom, cut, snap, pop, you know, that's rare in track and field, you know, although it can happen, but you get more foot, hamstring, you know, hip flexor, and like Achilles injuries, you know, from the heavy action of just running and sprinting than you do from the change of direction. The shearing action of the, you know, the fibia tibia is what tears the ACL mostly, you know, and I'm sure that didn't feel too good. So, yeah, I'm sure that, you know. So, I mean, you know, and you know, so to wrap this up, it's not that, you know, you can't get hurt lifting, and I don't want people to think that, you know, it's nothing can happen. You need a quality coach, right? You need a program. You need to be following some type of system and following some type of program, and you need to be consistent. And girls need to train more frequently than guys because of the lack of testosterone and the loss in muscle mass, and they need to be diligent with their nutrition. And those are really some key takeaways. So all women should strength train. I think as the higher levels, like you girls who, you know, you're going to play in college, you're in college, and you're beyond that, that training should be a year-round process from here on out. And that, you know, the biggest thing that you can do outside of the gym is focusing on your nutrition and eating well, right? And then, you know, like we always say here, kind of paying back the debt credit, you know, and making sure that you're taking care of your bodies. In not only lifting and stuff like that, because building that muscle mass to help your body, but, you know, stretching, foam rolling, ice baths, you know, and all those things that you can do. Active recovery is really important, you know, coming in on an off day and getting some cardio, getting some aerobic work to help kind of, you know, clear out the body and stuff like that and just kind of keep moving. So thanks so much for helping out, girls. I appreciate you coming on the Beef Lab. And I'm going to post all the show notes on the blog and on the podcast. You'll be able to see everything. You know, don't forget to give us a 5-star rating and a thumbs up on YouTube, and we'll see you next time.